Hello and welcome to Unacademy. I welcome you all to the second session of History under Conquer Prelims Part 2. Today we'll be discussing modern India questions and topics. Again, 5 to 6 very critical areas out of which you get questions. I have 10 questions for you based on those 5 to 6 areas. And I hope that you understand how we are going ahead with history, which is static heavy in this leg of Conquer Prelims. Now, before we begin, remember that on 23rd of February, we have the UCSC test. You can use the UCSC test to evaluate your preparation, but also join our family at a very discounted price. I hope that you will register for it. The link is given in the description box and you will become part of the UCSC, which is the Unacademy scholarship test. You will find the PPT and the PDF of this session in this Telegram channel. So I hope that you will also join this to get access to it. Now, as I promised, I will discuss all the 7 to 8 questions which I discussed yesterday in the ancient and medieval question, and I will discuss what are the answers and give you basic explanations for it also. So the first question which I discussed with you yesterday was, consider the following statements with regards to Indus Valley civilization. Here the first statement is incorrect because iron was not extensively used in the Indus Valley civilization. Second, it says East Asian world. It is not East Asian, it is West Asian. Mesopotamia is towards the west of the Indus Valley civilization. And lapis lazuli, carnelian, gold, silver were imported from Nippur and Ur, which are nothing but Mesopotamian cities. No, they were exported to. So therefore, none of the statements was correct. Therefore, the answer was D for this question. Thereafter, I discussed Buddhism and Jainism with you. Here in Buddhism, though there is no concept of soul, it believes in transmigration of life, energy and rebirth. Totally correct. Thanakvasi believe in praying to saints rather than idols in temples. Again, totally clear. Murti Pujaks are the ones who do idol worship in that regard. Both statements were correct for this question. Thereafter, we have the military obligation of the holder in Ikta system is specified. No, it isn't. That is a concept which is there in Mansabdari. Muhammad bin Tughlaq made the system hereditary. No. Firoz Shah Tughlaq. So here again the answer is neither 1 nor 2. Both the statements are incorrect. Thereafter we talked about Mansabdari. The Mansabdar were either paid in cash or land grants based on the salary fixed by the Izzat rank. Totally correct. And Shah Jahan increased the military liability of the Mansabdars without increasing the compensation by the state. This is also correct. The answer here is both 1 and 2. Which is the idea that with ek aspa, do aspa, she aspa, more horses at the same salary, military obligation was increased and there was no compensation provided with increase in Zata rank. So here again both 1 and 2 is the answer. Then the Nayankara system was designed with checks and balances to undercut the decentralizing tendencies of the power structure. No, there was no check and balance in Nayankara. It was not able to check the decentralizing tendencies. The Raya controlled temples and its resources in order to consolidate power. Again, incorrect answer here is neither 1 nor 2 because the Raya actually had control over only Nayaks. Nayaks controlled temples. Temples then controlled the people. So again, both statements incorrect. Thereafter, the Shahna a Mandi in that regard regulated, fixed and monitored the prices in the market. Yes, he regulated and monitored but not fixed the prices. That was the prerogative of the state. The reasons for the market reforms were the rising prices and silver shortage. Again, incorrect answer here is neither 1 nor 2. It was not market reforms, it was the Mongol threat which was the problem. Having a big standing army was a necessity. Then, Muhammad bin Tughlaq shifted the capital to Daulatabad in order to evade Mongol attacks. Again, incorrect. It was based on his distorted understanding of having a better strategically placed capital. The copper coin was tokenized in order to reduce dependence on silver for minting. Again, a statement which is incorrect. Your answer is neither 1 nor 2. The tokenization happened for silver and it was a bronze coin which was a tokenized form of the silver coin in that regard. So both statements incorrect. So I hope that you were able to give the right answers. I had encouraged you to write the answers in the comment box. So I hope that you gave the right answers to these questions. Today, now we will discuss 5 very important areas. Revolt of 1857, the concept of constitutional history, then 3 zones of nationalism, 1905 to 22, 23 to 34, and from 34 to 47. Important concepts I will discuss with you, and I have questions on that also. The first topic where modern India becomes important is 1857. Here you can get 2 to 3 types of questions. One based on causes, the other based on significance, and the other based on what is the consequence for the Indian subcontinent. Now, when we talk about the causes of the revolt of 1857, it is nothing but colonialism. It is political causes where the ruling elites had been displaced, humiliated, their pensions, their titles taken away. Economic, where the economic distress was there. You have deindustrialization, drain of wealth. Land revenue settlements was impoverishing the peasantry. That is why peasantry joined in big numbers in the revolt of 1887 also. Further, there was an issue of famines which were happening. Commercialization had killed the peasant. Indigo cultivation was breaking the back of the peasant. But what is interesting is the concept of Lex Loci Act, which allowed for inheritance of land by a son who was converted to Christianity. Missionary activities created suspicion, and therefore it was not just the grease cartridges, it is the general fear of conversion which was important. Further, we also have psychological changes because the English had lost in the Afghan wars, had lost in the Crimean War. The English formidable force was now being questioned. And 1857 was also a culmination point of a long drawn tradition of resistance, which has started with the Sannyasi revolt itself. So therefore, 1857, the long term causes are political, economic, social, related to colonialism itself. Two triggers will be there. First is Awadh annexation, where the peasant in arms is going to think that his own area is going under the British, with permanent settlement being now pushed towards Awadh. Second is more important, which is the military changes which are happening. They were enlisted initially with caste understanding. There were caste markers were allowed, caste based division was allowed. They were not deployed overseas, but with 1820s, 25s, general enlistment rules will come through. Discipline is going to become important. Uniformity will be brought in. With uniformity coming through, what will be a very important indicator is that they will be not allowed to use their caste markers, will sleep together. Further, they will be allowed to not eat separately. Therefore, caste markers were removed. The soldier who already had a certain form of, if you want to say, a certain understanding where he had a fear of conversion, he will see these things as problematic. Then he will be deployed overseas, which is Sat Samundar Par concept, again takes away your caste. Further, they were not given bhatta for that, which is the allowance in that sense. Further, there was humiliation, there was in a way torture of the soldiers also. And this is where the grease cartridge, which had both cow and pig fat, will in turn become a trigger, which will in turn lead to Mangal Pandey and Barakpur incident. But the real fire will start on 10th May 1857 in Meerut, which will spread to Delhi on 11th, and thereafter Delhi will fall. Now there are multiple theatres. Delhi is known for Bahadur Shah Zafar's importance, wherein he was added to the mutiny to legitimize it and make it bigger. Popular character was there. There were also certain sections which did not mutiny, did not take part, but popular character was there. People in and around, whoever had a frustration with the British did help. Or in other theatres also, ruling elites were very, very important. Rani Jhansi became important in the Jhansi sector. Nana Sahib took up the, you can say, leadership in Kanpur. Kanpur, one of the most bloodiest sectors with Sati Chaura Ghat, Bibi Ghar incident happening. Thereafter, you have Jagdishpur, Kunwar Singh, you have the Begum Hazrat Mahal, Lucknow. Everywhere it was the same elites who had been displaced who will take up leadership. But as we know, there was no centralized leadership, there was no centralized understanding of nationhood. The revolt itself was restorative in nature, in the way that the soldiers wanted to bring back their old elites. It was not looking towards a new nation, but restorative. That is why it is a restorative revolt of 1857. And that is why the word War of Independence becomes problematic, because there is no concept of independence per se. The theatres were not connected other than Delhi, Bareilly connected together. But the idea is again not a centralized core relationship was developed within these theatres. That is why the problem is weakness was what? No centralized leadership. Breakwaters were there in the form of the zamindars, the ruling elites, the educated elites stayed away. Further, there was no centralized leadership, no centralized notion of nationalism, restorative in nature. But revolt of 87 itself is not important. It is the significance and the consequence of the revolt which is more important. First is that the significance is there was a lot of Hindu-Muslim unity. It was a culmination of a long drawn process of resistance, and now the British got a shock of their life where the native had now revolted against them. Consequence will be two. One is called the Government of India Act 1858, which was based on the idea that now the East India Company cannot hold onto India, and therefore the crown is taking over. And when the crown is taking over, it transitions from company rule to crown rule. And we have Victoria's proclamation, where it is said they understood that it was religion which was problematic, so they will say no religion, no annexation. We will not in a way do anything with regards to social change. But equally important, general enlistment rules were changed. Further, the ratio of Europeans were increased in the army itself. One more consequence is called the White Mutiny, because the East India Company had two types of army, which is European forces and the Royal British Army. European forces were merged into the Royal British Army, which had a much lower salary. So the British officers, European officers of the British East India Company rebelled, mutinied against being merged with a lower paying Royal British Army. But the idea was they had to comply. Canning very effectively crushed that rebellion. But White Mutiny and the Government of India at 1858 is important. 1857 Revolt itself is important because it transitions, changes the fundamental nature of colonialism, and the actors change from company-based control to the British Parliament now taking over, from the concept of Board of Control and Court of Directors to the Secretary of State being appointed. That act will fundamentally change and add one more title to the Governor General of India, which is Governor General of India and Viceroy. So this event is very well understood, is there everywhere, but you should be able to understand the small nuances. That is why this discussion is important, because you should be able to understand and revise the areas which are important for the examination. Now let me take a question and see if you are able to understand the words in a jargonized form. The revolt of 1857 was restorative in nature with a centralized vision of territorial sovereignty. The revolt lacked popular character and was limited to the ruling elites. Which of the statements are correct? Now this again is a very simple, straightforward question. I will expect the answer in the comment section. I will discuss it tomorrow in the art and culture section and in the session related to art and culture. I will discuss this question with you, but I hope you will be able to pinpoint and understand the jargonized technical language which is there for this topic. Easy, straightforward topic. Again, in the next 45 minutes, I'll cover everything in a fashion where you are able to revise with me. So it is for a candidate to become confident with regards to history and areas which you should also concentrate on. Now, the most, you can say, fertile sector out of which most of the questions come is constitutional history. There are two sets here. One is 1773 to 1858 set, and the other one is 1861, 92, 1909, 1919, 1935 set. In this you have 1773, 1784, 1793. There's one amending act in 1781. Then you have 1813, 1833, 1853. These all are charter acts. This is called regulating act. This is called amending act. This is called Pitt's India Act. And this is Indian Council, Indian Council, Indian Council, also called the Morley-Minto reforms, Montagu-Chelmsford reforms or Government of India Act, Government of India Act 1935, the mini constitution on which our constitution is based on. Now, I will discuss this part in more detail because mostly the questions are coming from this area, but you can get a question from this area also, which is pre-1857, you can say changes, because that area now becomes fertile looking at the pattern. We've already got a question on 35, we've already got a question on 1990. But I will discuss with you the basic ideas also of the Indian Council Acts and Government of India Act. Now, the first is called Regulating Act of 1773. Now, the British very quickly will realize that the East India Company needs to be regulated, lot of revenue coming. More than that, Regulating Act was needed because Clive had created a fiscal bubble. At the same point of time, so much revenue was taken out of Bengal. The British East India Company was now looking for a loan with the Parliament. This is where the Parliament will realize that why is the East India Company bankrupt and has so much revenue in India itself. Therefore, the Regulating Act of 1773 will come into picture. This will have multiple provisions. First, the Governor of Bengal will become Governor General of Bengal. Thereafter, Bombay and Madras will lose their, you can say in a way, their power to make laws. This is called legislative decentralization into Calcutta. Calcutta, which is the capital at this point of time, will become more and more important, and Bombay and Madras presidency will be subordinated to the Governor General of Bengal. Further, Supreme Court will be established based on this act in 1774, and now the servants, the company servants, will not be allowed to take bribes or any form of cash transfer, and the British government will now start to regulate the court of directors, which were important. So it is Governor General of Bengal, legislative centralization, Supreme Court, which is important, and the idea that now they are trying to regulate the servants because Clive had misused this clause beyond exception. The amending act came through for this act itself in 1781 because the problem was that they had created a dual jurisdiction. The company officials were also reporting to the Governor General of Bengal and also to the Supreme Court. Supreme Court has no purpose in controlling the executive. That act said that the company officials are only answerable to the executive, which is the Governor General of Bengal, and not to the judiciary, which is Supreme Court. Thereafter, we will have before the Charter Act of 1793, the 1784, what is called as Pitt's India Act. Pitt the Younger, as is called, was not a prime minister who loved the East India Company too much, and the Regulating Act of 1784, as the act says, wanted to regulate the structure of the British East India Company in England. Here, there were only court of directors. Now, what they will do is, through the Regulating Act, create court of directors, board of control, wherein the court of directors will only be left with commercial functions. All administrative functions, revenue functions will be shifted to the board of control, which will also have a lot of representatives of the parliament. This is the first time when the East India Company is now being directly controlled by the parliament, but in a wheeled fashion because of the board of control looking like an independent body. This is also the point where the British realizes that the East India Company needs to be regulated. The sovereignty of the British Crown is being pushed onto the East India Company, and the importance of Indian revenue is now being realized. This is where, by the time the Charter Acts come through, the renewal come through, the question of East India Company's monopoly over India will also be questioned. And this is why we have 4 very, very important acts which follow. The 1793 Act is important because the concept of 20 years, which is every 20 years we will in a way renew the charter, which gave them a monopoly east of the Cape of Good Hope, will then be challenged, and the free trade lobby, the laissez-faire lobby will keep on saying, why are you giving monopoly to the East India Company? This is where you will also see one thing very interesting, that they will create a receipt out of, the parliament will create a receipt out of the East India Company, because 5 lakh pounds was now going to be annually transferred from the East India Company to the British Parliament as a form of one-time transfer. You also will see the royal, you can say the crown, controlling the appointment, the movement of the officials in India itself, governors and governor generals. Everything had to be done with permission itself. There will also be the idea that because opium had to be pushed into China for the drugging of Chinese to get their silk, country trading was allowed, where East India Company could give a license to an Indian trader to take that opium till the Macau sector in that regard. And the Mal Adalats, which are the excise-based adalats, were removed, and the judiciary was made a little bit more simplified. And all of the officials will be now paid till 1919 out of Indian revenue itself. This is a very interesting point. 1793 added a little bit of spice to that relationship. Small contours are very, very important in that regard. But the real problem will start from 1813 because of Adam Smithian notion of laissez-faire, because of Napoleonic wars, because of the continental blockade. The British Parliament had to concede, and in the 1813 Charter, Indian monopoly was lost and Chinese monopoly was still retained by the East India Company. And by 1833, both Indian, which had already been lost in 1813, by 1833, both China and India will be gone. Meaning the monopoly first, they will take away India in 1813 and then in China by 1833. 1813 also has a lot of interesting subtext. Missionaries were allowed, 1 lakh rupees for education, and it will also try to sort out the smaller details. More legislative centralization will happen towards Calcutta. So, monopoly question will in turn lead to India monopoly gone. Company shareholders will be given 5% more because monopoly is gone. Company can hold possessions for 20 years, but the crown is saying that they are holding it in the name of the crown itself. The board of control will be further expanded, and 1 lakh rupee for education purposes. Missionaries will be allowed to operate India for the first time in 1813. But now the Madras, Bombay and Calcutta laws have to go till the British Parliament for assent, and then only they can become laws in that regard. And separate account will be kept of the Board of Control and the Court of Directors to understand how much revenue is coming from India. But the process of legislative centralization will reach to the highest point when 1833 charter will come through. Now Governor General of Bengal will become Governor General of India. Calcutta will be made into a presidency. It will have a later governor separate. So 3 governors, Bombay, Madras and Calcutta. Governor General of India will become a separate position altogether. China monopoly gone. European immigration into India will be allowed for the first time. Further, now only Calcutta, initially the Governor of India only took a call for it. But later Calcutta, Bombay and Madras can only propose laws to the Governor General of India. His law member is going to then take a call and send that bill to the parliament. So therefore, the law making power has fully been taken away and everything is being done by the Governor General of India and his powers in that regard. Now, this is where Governor General of India's power will exponentially increase. The deprivation of legislative powers, the idea that all sums and expenditures will happen in the name of the Governor General, and thereafter slavery will be said that should be banned in India. It will take 10 more years for it to come into effect. But 1833, you have the Court of Directors, the Board of Control, the Governor General of India, and thereafter you have the 3 governors. He holds all the power. He is the supreme power in India, or everything happens in his name. They can only propose laws to him. He will then send it to the Board of Control. Board of Control will put it up to the Parliament and later will come back as a law into India. Very interesting structure, but complicated structure also. 1853 is important for 2 things. One, open competition with regards to the ICS will be introduced, that it will not be a nomination based structure as it was from the beginning itself, the Indian Civil Services. But more importantly, the Court of Director, Board of Control concept remains the same, but the Governor General of India gets 2 councils, Executive Council and Legislative Council, meaning the 2 functions have been distributed. The governor structure remains the same, but these 2 bodies have been added in order to make sure that the executive functions and the legislative functions are properly defined. That is why the Charter Act of 1853 is very, very important. Now, this area is very fertile and very, very important generally because UPSC asks questions from this area once they've exhausted the next set. So, between 1853 and 1773, which is 1773, 1784, 81, then 1793, 1813, 1833. This should be sorted for you for this examination because this is an area which becomes fertile. Other than that, 1858, we know what it will do is it will remove Board of Control and Court of Directors. Government of India Act will then bring in the Secretary of State with his India Council, which has 15 members. They will take control of the Governor General of India and Viceroy, and thereafter we will also have the governors now fully subordinated to the Governor General of India, who is also a representative of the Crown. That is why it's called Governor General of India and Viceroy. So the Secretary of State is important in that regard as a member who is added to this whole structure. The Crown in a way has fully taken control. Company rule ends as we discussed in the 1857 chapter. However, the Indian Council Acts are also important. 1861, 1892, 1909. I'll discuss the main provisions with you. 1861 is the one which finally brings what is called as legislative decentralization. Legislative centralization process is gone and finally PLCs will be added to the legislative powers will be restored back to the governor. So now the governor has PLC, and in the Legislative Council of the Viceroy, which is the Governor General of India and Viceroy, there will be 3 Indian members which will be added, not Executive Council but the Legislative Council. And in a way now they're trying to declutter this concept. So the structure is Secretary of State plus 15 members, then Governor General of India and Viceroy, then Governor, and later under them PLCs. And the number of provinces were also increased. You had Madras, Bombay, Calcutta. Further, there was addition of what is called as Oudh or Awadh, and you have Punjab and one big sector which is called Northwestern Province, which will later be split up into other aspects also. So this is the basic structure which comes to in 1861. This is very important, this PLC. which is Provincial Legislative Council being added. Governors of the provinces have now been given back their lawmaking power for their sector. 1892, as you know, is known for its indirect election clause. Indirect election, wherein though the word election is not used, now in the PLCs, and the Governor General had his Executive Council and Legislative Council as it is. In the CLC and the PLC, the people could be nominated by the different stratas. So therefore, the principle of popular representation into the Central Legislative Council and the Provincial Legislative Council now comes through, and therefore it becomes important in the larger understanding of our preparation that where are the small tweaks happening. Also, Satyendranath Sinha, the first Indian member to be associated with the Viceroy's Executive Council. This had been beyond charts. Here, 3 members had already been added, but for the first time, the structure remains the same, which is you have the Governor General of India and Viceroy, Executive Council, and the what we today call as the Legislative CLC. Here, 3 members, now here 1 member, and the Governor, and the structure remains the same, more or less. So, indirect election, as soon as you see, it is 1892 or nomination concept. 1861 is these aspects. 1909 Morley Minto, we already know, is one of the most controversial because of one word, which is separate electorates. Separate electorates for Muslims was added through the 1909 Act just after the Swadeshi movement in that regard. The idea was very simple: create the concept of a certain group having a certain interest which is incongruent to the other. Muslims were given separate electorates, meaning the seat was reserved. Not everybody votes to that candidate who is a reserved candidate. Only the same community. If it's a Muslim seat, only Muslims vote. It is disenfranchising other communities related to the constituency itself. That is the concept of separate electorate. Then, 2 very big, very important, you can say, sections. I will discuss the main points here. 1919 is known for 3 things, very, very important. What is called bicameralism, which is the Governor General of India's council will now, or his councils will become Executive Council, and he will have 2, which is the Lok Sabha Raj Sabha concept, the Central Legislative Assembly and the Council of State. This was to make the process more streamlined. There's something called legislative jurisdiction which is going to be established, which is the concept of the imperial list of subjects and the provincial list of subjects. There was also the High Commissioner's Office, which was added with the Secretary of State, under which the Governor General of India and Viceroy works. Imperial and provincial list was then further, provincial list had what is called as hierarchy. Under hierarchy, the concept was that there is reserved and transferred. Reserved was with the governor, who got an executive council for the first time. So he also has governor, has executive and legislative council, and the transfer subjects, which are mostly useless subjects, were governor plus his legislative council, where Indian element was higher. So everything which was important, for example, land revenue, irrigation, land revenue, law and order, police, was with the reserved subjects. Irrigation, sanitation, women was under transfer subjects. These are the 3 major things which are done: legislative jurisdictional change, bicameralism, executive council added to the governor of the provinces, and the concept of hierarchy per se. There will be also the expansion of separate electorates to the Sikhs, the Anglo-Indians, Europeans, in a way to further create more divisions in India. 1935 Government of India Act is one of the mini constitutions. The High Commissioner's Office is gone. Secretary of State is now a single person, has all the powers under him. Governor General of India and Viceroy remains the same. His structure of Executive Council and the what we call a Central Legislative Assembly and Council of State remains the same. Though the Executive Council's control over the governors are gone, that is called provincial autonomy. Hierarchy was proposed here, not came into context, did not come through, and thereafter the governors were now 2 types. Some had unicameral, which is governor plus legislative council and executive council, and the other is a governor who has legislative council, PLC, plus what is called as Vidhan Parishad, which is the provincial legislative assembly, and he had what is called as an executive council. This is called bicameralism at center, was introduced by 1919. Bicameralism in provinces was introduced by the 1935 Act. Hierarchy was abolished here, proposed here, did not come through at the center level, but was removed at the level of the provincial level. Provincial autonomy, hierarchy proposed at center did not come through. Hierarchy removed from the provinces itself. Bicameralism, wherein we had 6 very important provinces which had bicameral legislation and 5 which did not. Total is 11, which is Bombay, Madras, Calcutta. Thereafter, these 3 remain the same. Then you have Punjab, Northwestern Frontier Province. Sindh was taken out of Bombay Presidency. Odisha was taken out of Bihar. Bihar was also a province. And you had the concept of the Sindh being taken out because of communistic reasons, Odisha taken out of population, and we also see Northwestern Frontier Province coming out of Punjab to create one more sector in that regard. So 3 new Northwestern Frontier Province, Sindh, Odisha, Bihar, Bengal, Madras, Calcutta, and Awadh, which is now United Provinces, and Central Provinces already there. Out of which the old presidencies, which is Bengal, Bihar, the Madras sector, Bombay sector, and United Provinces sector, all got bicameral legislation. Others did not get bicameral legislation. All India Federation was proposed but did not come through again because something where the princely states would be then controlled by this Governor General, which was not acceptable to the princely states itself. So therefore, the concept of what we today call as All India Federation proposed not came through. The concept of hierarchy at center proposed not came through. Hierarchy removed at provincial level. You have also women getting, you can say, separate electorates and the right to vote. Separate electorates further extended to depressed classes even after the Pune Pact, and also given to women. So there is gendered based separate electorates, depressed class based separate electorates. So that was an important section. This is something which I again expect that you should know, which is the concept of 1919 and 1935 Act. 1935 already got a question, 1919 again got a question. So I hope that this small discussion has been comprehensive enough for you to revise this section, because if I go into each one of them in detail, then this becomes a 3.5 hour discussion. But in an efficient way, I'm trying to explain everything to you because you are revising with me, not learning. Okay. Based on this, I have questions for you. Let's check if you're able to understand it. Again, I'm telling you, these are very, very heavy topics. In class, I would teach this in close to 8 hours. But I'm trying to give you small packets of understanding, keywords which are related to these sections, 1919, 1935, 1909, all 3 important: separate electorates, hierarchy, bicameralism, and the All India Federation. This was a very controversial question, came this year in the 2024 paper also. Okay. Consider the following statements. The Board of Directors was added as an institution to the Pitt's India Act. Missionary activities were officially allowed by the East India Company in the subcontinent via the Charter Act of 1813. Which of the statements are correct? Thereafter, answer in the comment section. Consider the following statements. The Government of India Act 1935 extended the separate electorates to depressed classes, Sikhs, Anglo-Indians, and women. The Indian Council Act of 1861 allowed for the first time an Indian member into the Viceroy's Executive Council. You can see I'm cross-cutting the modules so that you can check your understanding of this area. Further, reserved subjects were legislated upon by the Governor and the Legislative Council of the province. Transfer subjects were legislated upon by the Governor and the Executive Council. Which of the statements are correct? Very good questions. Check every concept and aspect which I've discussed with you in the past 15-20 minutes. Very, very comprehensively. I'm trying to check if you have been able to pick up the keywords. If you can answer these questions after this discussion, you are sorted with regards to constitutional history. Now, in the next half an hour, what I want to do with you is key events in certain periods of nationalism. For example, when I talk about 1905 to 1922, there are certain important, very important moments. One is Swadeshi, 1905, wherein you have the concept of the partition of Bengal, which was based on the linguistic and the principle of religion. Linguistic principle was that you make the Bengali Hindu minority, Bengali Hindu nationalist into a minority in the sector of Western Bengal, where Hindi and Odia speakers were more. And the religious principle was to make him a religious minority in the East Bengal sector, where Hindu and Muslim, Hindu population is lower than Muslim population. Basically, the idea was Bengali Hindu nationalists should be reduced to a minority in both. linguistically in West, and linguistic and religiously in East. Based on that, moderate phase 1903 to 1905, 1905 16th October, Swadeshi. Swadeshi itself is important. Again, I will discuss the idea of Swadeshi is important in 1905. Why? Because it introduced new concepts, boycott of institutions, boycott of the concept of the British goods, liquor, cloth, and what we today call as basic glass and other items. Something totally new. Introduced the word Swaraj and Atma Shakti into our vocabulary. The Samitis were very important. Swadeshi Bandhav Samiti, very, very important. New institutions came up, nationalistic schools, because students were asked to leave the schools which were run by the British. Further, we also have the concept of what we today call as the nationalistic enterprises which came through, because they wanted to, in a way, undercut the British institutions in that regard. Swadeshi is generally important. A subsidiary issue related to it is 1907, what is called as the Surat split, over the issue of moderates and extremists. Moderates did not want Swadeshi to go beyond Bengal. Extremists wanted it. A shoe will be thrown at Firoz Shah Mehta, which will in turn lead to the Surat session erupting in violence and the split where the extremists are removed from the INC. INC's formation in 1885, that you would know. This is the first set which is important. Now, thereafter 1909 Act, I've already discussed with you. Then, the most important development in this phase till 1922, first is 1915, Gandhi coming back to India. 1916 and 1917, two very important concepts again. Home Rule League, wherein the Tilak Home Rule League and the Annie Besant Home Rule League will come up, two Home Rule Leagues. The idea that the INC does not meet every year, just only meets 3 days. We need all India year-long nationalism, a body which can push for nationalism throughout the year in that regard. But 1916 is also the year where Gandhi is going to travel across India. He will see what is happening everywhere. Then strategically intervene into 3 areas. 1917, he will intervene in Champaran, where it was the concept of Teen Kathia, and Indigo, where he will get the compensation, only 25%, but an amount where the planters gave back to the indigo cultivators, a very big thing. Here, the concept of non-cooperation was at place. Then in 1918, 2 interventions, which is the concept of Kheda, where remissions to revenue should have happened, did not happen. So the concept of no rent campaign started, again non-cooperation. And 1918 is Ahmedabad, where mill owner versus workers was up, 50% asked by the workers, 25% being expected or in a way offered by the mill owners. Gandhi got a deal broken through the concept of fast, in which 35% hike was given rather than 50 or 25, middle path. Again, important because Gandhi had shown that his methods which had been developed in South Africa work in India. 3 tangible outcomes out of Satyagraha. Thereafter, 1919, 1915 Defence of India Act extended indefinitely in the concept of Rowlatt Act or the Anarchical and Revolutionaries Crime Act. 1919 Act will become the stage through which Gandhi is going to launch himself. 6th April 1919 Hartal, however, will end up in Amritsar violence on 10th April, which will be one of the frustrations of Rowlatt Act coming through, where Punjab had contributed to the First World War quite a lot. Saifuddin Kichli, when Dr. Satyapal been picked up. 10th April will in turn be 10th and 11th, a lot of violence in Punjab, specifically Amritsar. Dyer is going to be brought in, and on 13th April he will get his revenge, which is the Jallianwala Bagh massacre. So 6th, 10th, 13th. 13th April, Jallianwala Bagh massacre, 1650 rounds fired. Gandhi will be shocked. The darkest moment in Indian history with regards to modern India. He will give up his Kaisar-e-Hind. Rabindranath Tagore is going to give up his Nobel Prize. The idea is very simple. Everybody was in shock because now colonialism was in front of everybody. Satyagraha, people had not learned. Too much violence was happening. 10th April, Amritsar violence transpires into 13th April. An illegal martial law was introduced. Dyer is going to fire upon people who were not political but sitting there because of Baisakhi, with 2,000 to 5,000 people killed in that incident, including Udham Singh being shot in his leg, who will later take the revenge in the form of the killing of O'Dwyer, who was the lieutenant governor. But the idea is very simple. Jallianwala Bagh shook everyone, and therefore Gandhi withdrew that movement. But 1919 is also the year of the Treaty of Versailles, through which Germany had been humiliated. One of the actors was Ottoman Empire. Ottoman Empire involved in the First World War. Therefore, the Treaty of Sevres was coming through in 1920, which in turn created the Khilafat issue, wherein the Khalifa, who is the king of Ottoman Empire, should not be humiliated. He should be given certain areas, movement across the world with regards to Muslims. However, in India, the Ali brothers took up this concept. Gandhi wanted to use and undercut the 1909 Act via the Khilafat issue. So he will become the member of the All India Khilafat Committee also. Tilak was opposing Khilafat issue being absorbed by INC. On 1st August, when Bal Gangadhar Tilak, a very important personality, is going to die, thereafter Gandhi will make Khilafat, be the Punjab wrongs and the Khilafat together, to launch what is called as the non-cooperation movement, or what is called Khilafat non-cooperation movement. The basic program remains the same, but a very important concept comes through, which is the concept of boycotting councils. Legislative councils should be boycotted. Movement will take a lot of momentum. Gandhi had said that if we go for this properly, we will be able to get Swaraj very, very soon, within 1 year. But one very important session happens in between. Calcutta special session, Khilafat issue adopted. Nagpur session will forever change INC. It will say that we will work for Swaraj, not within constitutional means. The moderate mentality is gone. Extra constitutional means through protest and through mass movement in that regard. That is why Nagpur session important. Chauri Chaura will happen on 5th February. And in turn, Gandhi will now, in order to avoid another Jallianwala Bagh, take the brunt on him, get arrested, and he will stop the non-cooperation because of Chauri Chaura. The movement was, as it is, overheating. He was using the concept of STS, which is struggle through struggle, wherein struggle through struggle, the truce was taken via Chauri Chaura. So this is a very important phase. All important events I've discussed with you. Now, based on this, I can ask you the following questions. For example, consider the following statements. The linguistic principle of partition of Bengal wanted to reduce the Bengali nationalist to a minority in the eastern Bengal sector. The Delhi Darbar of 1911 annulled the partition of Bengal and created Orissa as a separate province. Interesting question. One thing which I picked up from here is Hardin bombing, Delhi Darbar concept. I want to check if you know the answer to this question. If you do, you are going to write the answer in the chat box. One more interesting question which can come from this area. The boycott of legislative councils was an important aspect of Swadeshi movement. The Nagpur session of the Indian National Congress changed its goal to Swaraj through constitutional means. Again, I am checking if you've been listening to me, if you are thorough with modern India in that regard, if you know these finer details in that sense. Important section again. Thereafter, we move to 1923 to 34. This is the period of political hiatus, wherein you have 1923 to 25, which is called the period of Swarajist no changers. 25 to 27 is responsivist, non-responsivist. 1927 is Simon Commission. 1929 is a very explosive year. I will discuss that, which is Irwin Declaration, Delhi Manifesto, and the concept of Purna Swaraj Resolution, Lahore Session. 1930 to 34 is CDM, pure CDM with regards to 11-point ultimatum. So, how does it start? Swarajist no changers. Legislative council boycott was there. Swarajist said that let us go back into these councils, end or mend these councils, create a new arena, C.R. Das, Motilal Nehru, of a place where we can push nationalism. No changers say no, let's be true to Gandhian constructive program. Gandhi did not explicitly support neither. He was in jail. Will come out in 1924. An ordinance will come from the Viceroy. A lot of people will be arrested. A lot of violence will be done by the British. Now in 1924, Gandhi is going to support the Swarajist concept. In Belgaum session 1924-25 rather, he will be the president of the INC, endorse the Swarajist program, and now all the members will fight the elections. Swarajists did very good work, were able to use whatever constitutional means were given within 1919 Act to block a lot of legislation in the Legislative Council, with central or provincial. However, there was constructive work also happening in the background. This is what kept nationalism alive. However, the Swarajist absorbed communalism. Responsivist meaning tried to push Hindu agenda. Non-responsivist, only Motilal Nehru said let's not do that. C.R. Das is going to die. Swarajist no changes will become irrelevant. 1927, Simon Commission will come. 1919 Act had a provision. After 10 years, check if the working is fine or not. Wherein 1927, 2 years early, because Swarajis has misused those provisions. So Simon Commission will come in 1927. The report will only come through in 1930, but it was something which gave impetus to the nationalist movement, because all 7 members were British parliamentary members. No Indian member. What's the point of having a commission which checks, Indian Statutory Commission checking the working without no Indian understanding? This will reinvigorate. Challenge will come for Birkenhead. Write your own constitution. Nehru report. Jinnah did not like the idea that Nehru report said that separate electorate should not be there. So he will give 14 points of Jinnah. But problem with Nehru report was it asked for dominion status. When Nehru and Jawaharlal Nehru and Subhash Chandra Bose will say, when did we decide on that as the target? Therefore, what is going to happen is, now by 1929, because of the Great Depression, Irwin is going to give the Deepavali Declaration, which is that we will give you dominion status. We will hold roundtable conferences in England for that. For that, we will also do one more thing. Because roundtable conferences are happening, we will discuss if and when the dominion status will be given. The idea was, Jawaharlal Nehru, Subhash Chandra Bose said, what's the point? We don't want dominion. But Gandhi said, I'm giving them 1 month. Delhi manifesto is, if you want to give us dominion status, give it to us right now. If you can't, then we will not be part of the roundtable conferences. Irwin said nothing. Thereafter, that 1 month, you can say, idea was gone. Jawaharlal Nehru, Subhash Chandra Bose will take up this issue in 1929, and in the Lahore session with President Jawaharlal Nehru, they will talk about Purna Swaraj, that the target is not dominion, complete independence, and 26 January 1930 is going to be considered as the first Independence Day. On 30th of January, Gandhi is going to give the 11-point ultimatum. If accepted, he will not go for civil disobedience. If not accepted, he will go for civil disobedience. And that is where the year 1930 is very significant, because again he will start his Dandi March, which will culminate on 6th April, a very important date, where he will break the salt law. Salt affects everybody. Very well received. CDM that was a pure all India level movement for Alexander, what is called as the Cunningham Circular in Assam, to the salt marches in the Tripuri section, from the salt marches of what we call as the Thanjore sector, Dandi March. Thereafter in Orissa also salt marches happened. No Chaukidari or anti-Chaukidari tax campaign, no revenue rent campaign in Bihar. There will be what we call as the Prabhat ferries. There will be nationalism which will spread to the grassroots level. So every women, students, workers, peasants, everybody is going to become part of this movement. However, in the background, the first roundtable conference will happen. INC is not going to become a part of it, because in the 1929 resolution it was said that they will boycott it. Now, Irwin is asked by the British government to bring the INC to the negotiating table, second roundtable conference. 1 year of this movement went forward. No rent, anti-Chaukidari, Cunningham Circular, salt marches, the Prabhat ferries, the Vanar Senas of Gandhi, Gandhi himself arrested, the Darsana salt raid, everything will happen. But the movement was not going anywhere. So in 1931, there will be a certain convergence. Gandhi was looking for a truce. Irwin wanted INC to come to the second roundtable conference. That will in turn lead to the Gandhi-Irwin Pact. Something which I am not talking about is the revolutionary part 1 and part 2. I will maybe discuss that separately in a video, but the idea is, in the background, the HRA had become the HSRA, and a very important personality, Bhagat Singh, was now being pushed to be, under Lahore conspiracy case, to be hanged and to be martyred. That is a different angle, where Gandhi-Irwin Pact will not be able to commute his sentence. Gandhi will be shown black flags, but Gandhi as a sole representative will go to London to the second roundtable conference, and Irwin is going to leave all the satyagrahis. Remission will be given in revenue, people's confiscated tax and land will be given back. So there was a lot of good. 10 clauses were there. Police access and the commutation of the sentence of the 3 important personalities of HSRA was not accepted by Irwin. That was Irwin's personal project, Lahore conspiracy case. Now, Gandhi will go to the second roundtable conference. Problem is going to be that Gandhi had now become too important. INC had become too important. Churchill wanted that Ramsay MacDonald bring INC to its peace. This is where the minorities pact is going to emerge in the second roundtable conference, where depressed classes will be proposed to be given as separate electorates. This is where Gandhi will lose his mind. He will say that depressed classes are part of Hindu society, cannot create a new section, cannot create a new axis of problems. And this is where the depressed class, which is the depressed classes and the Sikhs, Anglo-Indian members, all come together to create Minorities Pact versus Gandhi in the second roundtable conference, diminish the idea that INC does not represent whole of India but only the caste Hindus, and a deadlock will emerge. Gandhi will come back, start CDM phase 2. Wellington had now replaced Irwin. Too much governmental repression. 1933 he will suspend this movement. 1934 he will withdraw the movement. Gandhi himself will in 1932 go on to fast on to death if depressed classes given through the Ramsay MacDonald Award or the communal awards is not taken back. Dr. Ambedkar and Gandhi will then go into a pact which is called Pune Pact, 1932, Yadarwa jail, and Gandhi will then go into his Harijan campaign from 1933 onwards till 1938-39. He will take political hiatus. He will leave the INC in 1934 for political purification and now go for Harijan campaign and constructive work. This phase is an important phase because CDM was an all India level movement and the third roundtable conference will happen in the background of the Pune Pact. The white papers will be written and that will be reproduced along with the Simon Commission report in 1935 Government of India Act, a very important document. This is the phase where the British realized that they can use the minority question to undercut the INC itself. They had already had the communal key. Now the second key which they got was the concept of minorities and specifically depressed classes. Now based on all of these events, you can get these following type of questions. You have, consider the following statements. The Swarajists wanted to enter the councils in order to create a new arena of nationalism. The explicit support of Gandhi to the cause of the Swarajists came at the Gaya session in 1924. Which of the following statements are correct? Again, checking 2 to 3 aspects of this whole discussion. Second, the support of the Indian National Congress to the Irwin Declaration was contingent to its immediate implementation. The stand of the Minorities Pact in the third roundtable conference created a deadlock which undermined the importance of the Indian National Congress. Which of the statements is correct? Very easy question. If you understand the basic story, basic understanding which I have talked about. Thereafter, we go into the last phase. Here again, multiple important events. 1935 Government of India Act I have already discussed with you. A mini constitution in itself, very important provisions. But 1938-39 important, build up to the Second World War. But at the same point of time, Gandhi-Bose tensions will start. By 1939, the Haripura session, then the Tripuri session, Bose will leave the INC because of the clash over presidentship, Pattabhi Sitaramaiah versus Bose, which in turn will lead to Gandhi saying, I will not reconstitute the AICC. Bose will see no other option. He will then leave and launch a movement without the permission of the INC, will be expelled. He will create his forward bloc. Important point is, Gandhi did not want a social revolution. Bose was too radical for Gandhi. Then September 1939, Second World War will start, and then will come the whole issue of what to do in supporting the British or not. Viceroy is Linlithgow. Linlithgow creates war cabinet. INC says we will only enter war cabinet if you give us concessions. This is where Jawaharlal Nehru is going to become important. Gandhi said unconditional support against Hitler, fascism is more bad. Bose said let's go for a national movement. He was expelled. Jawaharlal Nehru says we only support the British if they give us concessions, tell us the war aims, Ramgarh session, Wardha resolution, very important in that regard. However, Linlithgow did not respond properly. So, INC did not join the war cabinet, but Jinnah did. Jinnah will become very, very important. 1936 elections he had performed very badly. Now the bromance or the intimate relationship between Jinnah and Linlithgow is going to develop, which is going to be very important in finding the third key to break Indian nationalism, which is concept of Pakistan and Jinnah's importance and Muslim League being nothing in 1936 with 3% vote share and 1946 getting 87% vote share in Muslims itself. Separate electorates, they were able to get only 3% vote share in 1936, but in 46 he got 87%. That is Linlithgow's state push to Jinnah in that regard. Now, the first 2 years of the Second World War is very bad for the British. 39, 40, 41, very bad, wherein Hitler had now taken France, was expanding through continental Europe, and Japan will join by 1941 and make issues problematic in the Malayan Peninsula, that whole sector in the Southeast Asian sector. This is where the first offer will come, which is called, or concession will come, which is called August offer. August offer, dominion status within the Commonwealth. We will create a constituent assembly mainly comprising of Indians. Minorities consent important for constitutional development. This is where Jinnah's influence on Lithgow created this provision. India says, the INC says, no, we are not going to take dominion. As it is, it should not be mainly, it should have Indians in that regard. August offer denied, as it is designed to fail, because Jinnah, because in Lithgow and Churchill were only trying to do this to show to the Americans that, see, Indians are not taking offers. Once the Japanese will start to rampage through the Indian sector, through the Southeast Asian sector, then will come two very important concepts. 1941, Gandhi not ready to launch any movement, individual satyagraha, useless movement, talk about the press freedom, move towards Delhi, get arrested, no real impact. But 1942 important for two reasons. Cripps mission will be sent to India, two good provisions, two bad provisions. We will give you dominion status, but an option to leave Commonwealth, the way we got independence also. Second, a constituent assembly having nominated members from the princely state, proportional representation from provinces, all Indian, no mainly Indian. Good. Two bad clauses. One, minorities consent is important for any form of constitutional development. But second, if a province wants to leave the union, that province will have an option to write a separate constitution. Partition clause now introduced within the Cripps mission, again designed to fail, only a policy to appease the Americans and the allied powers. 42 also important because of Quit India. 8th August 1942, Quit India resolution, where he will say he will give instructions to everyone what to do, because he knew that there was a chance that he would get arrested, but the arrest was very, very quick in that regard. 8th August 1942, the Gwalior Tank resolution, Quit India resolution. 9th August, everybody picked up, all major leaders, INC in a way disbanded. But because of Gandhian movement of Rowlatt, non-cooperation CDM, people had now become accustomed to become nationalistic without a leader itself. Alternative leadership, parallel governments, rampaging of the people because the leaders were not there, governmental repression, and what is called as underground activities is going to become important. Usha Mehta, the Congress radio. Repression was too much. People still fought. Lithgow was in no mood to allow this movement to go forward. Quit India will in a way fizz out. But the fact was, now the British could see that the people have become independent of the leaders when it comes to the national movement. Thereafter, 42, 43, in the background, the INA will be formed in the Malayan Peninsula by Mohan Singh. In 1941, he will thereafter take the POWs, Indian POWs from the Japanese, delay the invasion of Japanese to India. He will then create the Indian National Army. Thereafter, in 1942, Bangkok Conference is going to happen, where Raj Bihari Bose is going to come from Japan, meet Mohan Singh, create the Indian Independence League. And meanwhile, Bose had gone from India towards Russia. When Russia joined the war, he went to Germany, met Hitler, went to Japan, and in 1943 he will reach to Singapore, where Mohan Singh and Raj Bihari Bose is going to give the leadership to Bose, and now the Azad Hind Sarkar and Azad Hind Fauj will be created properly. Then they will move to Rangoon as a very important center. Andaman and Nicobar Islands will be given by the Japanese to the Azad Hind Sarkar. Rangoon, 1944. Imphal campaign is going to be disastrous. INA will be in a way captured by the British, and by that time, as it is, Japanese will surrender after Hiroshima and Nagasaki. 1945 is an important year, 46 and 1947. 45, we have the first Revolt Conference, last bid for Churchill to show to the people that he was in a way very, very good to the Indians, or he in a way wanted to show his sincerity towards the Indians. Revolt Conference, all leaders will be in a way taken out from jail, called to Shimla. Idea was, once the war is properly over, all treaties are signed, Viceroy's Executive Council will have 3 new components. Executive Council have no Britishers, only the Commander-in-Chief and the Viceroy is going to be Britisher. 5 members of Hindus, 5 Muslims and 5 minorities will now in a way allow, this will become the Constituent Assembly, which will allow for transfer of power. However, Muslim League, Jinnah will say that Congress should be only able to nominate 5 Hindu members, not the other 5 and 5, which is Muslim and the minorities members, thinking that he will only have 1/3 control, where 2/3 control would go to the Congress. Congress will say we are not a caste Hindu party. Deadlock will be created. We will do the foolishness of dissolving this conference once Jinnah will walk out. Jinnah had become too important. By this point of time, partition had become inevitable, with Jinnah also denying the C. Rajagopalachari formula and this Desai Liaquat Pact, knowing that Pakistan will come. Thereafter, 1945 November, we will have the famous INA trials, a very big moment in which everything backfired on the British. British wanted to try the three very important personalities, Dillon, Sehgal and Shahnawaz, as a way of showing treason and then giving them death sentence. They had to commute the death sentence and acquit them, because when they tried to show the INA as a treasonous body, everybody saw them rather as a hero, and therefore there will be multiple councils which will be created. The INC is going to defend them. In Red Fort, spectacle will be created. The British could see that now their control was fading away. It was the first nail in the coffin for the British. INA trials will backfire beyond exception. Violence will happen. People will show a lot of support. INA members will be given employment. Very important week, November of 1945. Now, in February of 1946 will happen the second or the last nail in the coffin for the British, which is called the RIN mutiny, the Royal Indian Navy mutiny. HMS IS Talwar was there in Bombay. Very bad food. One sailor had been prosecuted for writing "Quit India" on the ship itself. They were deployed in Indonesia. Racial violence and torture, along with racial discrimination, too much frustration. They will, when a officer will not be prosecuted for actually shooting upon a sailor on the ratings, the ship will go into mutiny. That will have an impact across India till Aden, till the Persian Gulf in that regard, wherein all of them in solidarity to the HMIS Talwar, a pure mutiny is going to happen throughout the army, navy, air force. And now it was very clear that the British cannot in a way trust their own military, which was a very important tool for ruling India in that regard. This is where Patel and Jinnah both went to the sailors and said, we will sort it out, we will not prosecute you. The idea was the control of the military, the same military which was ready to shoot on compatriots in the Jallianwala Bagh, was now not going to be controlled by the British. The British start to realize things are going out of hand. This is where Churchill will lose the elections. Clement Attlee will come to power as the Prime Minister of England. He will send the cabinet mission. Cabinet mission, same A.V. Alexander. Alexander was already involved, but Pethick Lawrence, Alexander and Cripps, same Cripps which had come under Cripps mission, they will come. Nehru had a good relationship with Clement Attlee because of the socialist connection. 1946, by the end, cabinet mission will say, okay, bring Jinnah. We would like to know what is the concept of Pakistan. Pakistan, what Jinnah wanted was beyond exception in giving. Cabinet mission plan is going to become very important. Reject the concept of Pakistan. This will intensify the concept of Pakistan, and the violence in communism is going to increase in 1946 exponentially. Same point of time, cabinet mission is going now to now say that okay, what we will do is the three-tier formula. One, all majority provinces, then West Muslim majority, East Muslim majority. Together, timeline was 10 years, that we will give independence in 1956, and this three-tier formula, we will go for election in 1946 itself, 46-47 elections as it's called, late 46 elections, which is June, July we will hold this. And thereafter, cabinet mission also says a very important thing, that we will allow the configurations to change twice. First at the time of creation of the union, and then after 10 years of the first general election, therein allowing for a partition clause to be pushed in, wherein the provinces could pull apart and secede out of the union, which was a problematic aspect of the cabinet mission. Cabinet mission plan under which there will be the elections, 1946 elections, one of the biggest, grandest. Muslim League will perform very good, take all the seats in the interim government or what is the Constituent Assembly with regards to Muslim separate electorates. Congress will also do well, have a proper majority. What will happen is that the Muslim League will not join the interim government, but the interim government will be formed. By October, the Muslim League will join, but the concept of Direct Action Day, Pakistan Day had already come through. By 1946 December, it was very clear that the partition was going to happen and all other formulas had been removed, but Congress and the interim government had been formed in that regard. Now, in February of 1947, will come Attlee's declaration that we will give India independence with everything going out of hand, with so much pressure from the US. In June of 1948, he will change the viceroy now. Wavell will go out, Mountbatten will come to India in March. He will realize that the cabinet mission three-tier concept is not possible, he will say we need an interim solution. ISME plan, Dickey Bird plan will say let's give each province separate independence, bring them together. Balkanization, plan Balkan. Jawaharlal Nehru says you have lost your mind. This is where 3rd June plan will come through. 3rd June plan will say we will create 2 dominions, India and Pakistan, and the Northwestern Frontier Province, Punjab, will go for plebiscite, which was never put into place, for if they want to become part of Pakistan or they want to be a separate nation altogether. Princely states will become independent. This is also the same action plan which will then be ratified as the concept of Indian Independence Act. Ratcliffe Commission will be also established, and on 15th August 1947 we will get independence. This is basically the story. I've given you the whole modern India from 1905 till 1947 in this discussion. So I hope that this has been comprehensive. I've given the timeline, I've given the basic points also. Looking at questions out of this area is equally important. Consider the following statements. Under Quit India proposal, the government servants were asked to quit their posts and join the national movement. This is an intricate point. I want to check if you know this point or not. The August offer proposed dominion status with the option to leave the Commonwealth. 1. Then the RIN mutiny was limited to the military establishments in the Indian subcontinent. The INA was conceptualized and formed under the leadership of Raj Bihari Bose and Subhash Chandra. These 10 questions, the answers I will give you in the next session. In art and culture session, initially I will discuss these 10 questions. You will give me the answers in the comment section of this video itself. And I hope that you found this session useful. In 1 hour, I tried to cover all the important topics of ancient and medieval. And today in this 1 hour, I have also tried to cover everything important for modern India. This is the whole purpose of Conquer Prelims. It has to be comprehensive, but also very, very, very encapsulated so that you can revise with me and also use it for the examination. Thank you. Take care. I'll see you tomorrow with art and culture based understanding. Thank you. Take care.